Everybody, welcome to Townsend 505. Uh, Jacob is going to be joining me again. We're on season 2, episode 2 on the Johnny Cash series. We're going to be reviewing his next album, Ride This Train. Right now, we're riding on Thomas the Tank Engine, and with Johnny Cash leading us the way. Briar has a fun fact. Fun fact: by the time this album came out, 14 books of the Railway series of books Thomas the Tank Engine is based on had come out. This has been Thomas Facts with Briar. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. This is a great album. Thomas the Tank Engine's a good show from my childhood. It's an exciting night.
Yes, and this is an exciting night for me too because this is like one of my favorite Johnny Cash albums that were like in general. Like I've heard quite a bit of Johnny Cash albums now, and I feel now securely saying that this is a top 5 Johnny Cash album from the albums I've heard both before this album and some of the albums I heard after this album that I've heard previously. So let's get right into it.
I wanted the background information.
Oh, okay. Let's get that background information.
All right. So this is a concept album, and it's kind of funny that I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia claim page. I can't talk tonight. The Wikipedia page of this claims this was his first full concept album. I disagree on that. I think Songs of Our Soil was his first concept album. That had more of a common theme surrounding the song. Songs of Our Soil was about death. This one, I think, takes the concept to greater strengths because this album, Ride This Train, is like a travelogue. There's a subheading to the Ride This Train album that says this is a stirring travelogue of America in song and story. So pretty much on this album, it's like you're riding a train with Johnny Cash, and Johnny Cash is playing these different characters on the train. And with each song and in each place that the train travels to, Johnny Cash at the beginning is narrating different stories of different characters, which sets up the song that he's about to sing. And I think it's a cool idea for a concept album. This album was very successful. It was so successful that his original label, Sun, released a compilation to capitalize on the success of this album. They did a compilation 2 years later called All Aboard the Blue Train, which I think was mainly songs we had already heard. I don't know if we're reviewing that album or not. This album had only one single, and we'll talk about that single in a little bit. But this album was a blind spot. I had not heard this album, anything on this album, much like the last album. Now There Was a Song, the all covers album he did. And it was kind of fascinating because Nick, you had told me you had heard this album before.
Yes, I have.
And I was completely blind to this album. I hadn't heard any song from this, not even the one single that was released from this album. But listening to it, I can tell you this is a fantastic record. I enjoyed pretty much everything about this album, and this may or may not be my favorite Johnny Cash album as of now, but we'll see.
We'll find out at the end of the review. As for your question, we are not reviewing that album. There's 2 compilation albums we're reviewing, but that's not the one. The 2 compilation albums we're reviewing in season 2 is Ring of Fire, The Best of Johnny Cash, and Original Sound of Johnny Cash.
Okay.
Those are the 2 we're going to be covering. But rather than that, any other compilation album we're not covering. Also, I forgot to mention it, but we're also going to be covering 2 60s live albums as well. The 2 big ones, Live at Folsom Prison and Live at San Quentin. I feel like we had to cover those 2.
Yeah, those are two big albums that define his career. So you couldn't overlook those albums just because they're live albums.
Exactly. So, without further ado, You gave your brief thoughts. I'm gonna give my brief thoughts. Like I said, this is one of my favorites. It's just I love the theme of it. I love the concept of it. And I like the overall feel of it. But we'll go more into it when we get to it. First track on the album. This is a 8-track album, and there's only 4 songs on side 1 and 4 songs on side 2. But first song on side 1, "Loading Coal."
Loading Coal. So, like I said, right off the bat, he sets up the concept very well. You hear the sound effect of the train, which begins and ends each song. And then Johnny will narrate, "Oh, riding this train to wherever place he's going," and he does like a whole kind of like an introduction of what the point of this album is. It's like kind of traveling to different cities and places in American history. There's this one really cool part where he starts mentioning the names of all the different Native American tribes, and he kind of does like this talk style singing beat or whatever, and kind of rhymes all the names together. I thought that was a cool bit before he segues into the song about loading coal, about a family of coal miners. And I gotta say, after hearing that last album, there was a song which was a departure from the rockabilly sound, and it was more of a old school style traditional country, which I wasn't used to hearing. It was great seeing him return to his signature style right off the bat on this first track. And I think it's a catchy song. It's a catchy storytelling song about coal mining, loading coal, loading coal. It's another real catchy earworm of a song. I read this was actually the B-side to the main single, which was released, which we'll get to that when we get to side 2. But, man, this is a great song all around. This is one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah, this is a great song on the album. Bar comment, good to see my boy in the background. Well, yeah, it's in the background because we're riding the train right now, bro. We're riding the Thomas the Tank Engine. Johnny Cash, me, Jacob, and Johnny Cash are riding this train. Quite literally, we're riding this train. So, yeah, this is what do you say?
I was about to say, we're riding the train. Johnny Cash is singing. Well, actually, if we were in the Thomas the Tank Engine show, the original host for that show was Ringo Starr, of all people.
Yeah.
So Ringo Starr needs to join us.
Yes. Of course. But yeah, I agree. This is a great song on the album. Great introduction to the album. This is not in my top 5, though. I think there are songs I like better than this, but just goes to show how great this album is. This is just an epic opener, and it's not even my top 5. Very big honorable mention, though. Huge honorable mention. We get to the next song on the album, "Slow Rider."
Slow Rider, yeah. Oh man, this is another good song. See, this one, come to find out, was based on the life of an actual historical figure, an outlaw by the name of John Wesley Harding, who was a gunslinger who did kill a lot of people. And this is a song written in his perspective, who is on the run, and he's kind of living a life in shame because he's feeling the weight of killing a bunch of men, pretty much. And I enjoyed the perspective on this song. It's not my favorite track on the album, but still a really good song and some great songwriting and character perspective. I think I like the historical background. One thing I love about this album, the historical background on like every single song on this album, and this one is no exception.
I agree with you. This is a good song on the album, and I also agree this is also not my top 5. So, first 2 songs on the album I absolutely love, but it's not even my top 5. It's crazy. I love this song though, but I will say the next 5 songs will be my top 5 though. I'm gonna kind of gonna spoil that, but yeah. But speaking of that, we're going to the next song, "Lumberjack."
All right. The funny thing is, when hearing this song singing about him being a lumberjack, my mind always drifted back. I don't know if you watched this cartoon growing up, but Disney had a cartoon about probably the most famous lumberjack, Paul Bunyan. So every time he would sing about that album, my mind would always drift back to the old Disney cartoon, which had a catchy song in its own right. Hey,
I think I know what you're talking about.
Paul Bunyan. I love that cartoon. But going back to this song, another catchy song. I'd put it in similar vein as Loading Coal. It's just a catchy earworm. This is another one of the highlights of the album. It's got a good rhythm to it, like some of his other rockabilly songs, and just the storytelling in this song is very engaging. This one is, I will say, this one is in my top 5.
Cool. Yeah, this is in my top 5. I really like this song. It's such a great song to follow up Slow Rider. So we're Loading Coal. We're it's Slow Rider now. Now we're going to the Lumberjack. It's great progression through the album. This is like one of my all-time favorite concept albums. I told this to Jacob before air when we first started sounding together. I think this is one of the best concept albums. It's such a cool concept of going through America in a train and kind of like just going through stuff. It's such a cool concept, and I think he executes it really well. This is no exception. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. Really like it. We get to the last song on side 1, Doreen of Pontchartrain.
I think it's Doreen of Pontchartrain.
Yep.
That's an area in Louisiana. I think it's actually a river.
Louisiana, you said. Down deep, Louisiana, across the New Orleans.
New Orleans, if you're Elton John. We'll save that when we cover that infamous album in my ongoing Elton John series. But this song's pretty good too. I am a sucker for drawn out storytelling love songs. This one is no exception. He's singing about his attraction to Doreen of Pontchartrain. I mean, you see like the ups and downs of that. You see the love, you see the affection, you see the heartbreak and the desperation. And Johnny Cash just nailed every emotion on this song. And it's got a really good chorus. Doreen, Pontchartrain, and man, this is another really good song on the album. Oh, it's so good. I don't have much more to say. I love this song.
Me too. I love this song too. It's a great way to end off the first side. It's so relaxed. Like, you have these first 3 songs that kind of like, like very fast pace, not fast paced, but like, get you in the mood. And then this song just like is like a really nice way to end off the first side. Like, you got your excitement. Now you're going to slow it down a little bit before we get to the next side of the album. It's just a great flow of 4 tracks, You probably, anyone would be thinking like, how can you follow up a first side like that? Like 4 absolutely amazing songs. How are we going to follow that up? Well, we'll find out. We're going to flip the record over. I don't own the record, so just pretend this is the record and
my invisible record.
Yep. Going to Memphis.
Let's just say, I will say this now. I think every time we review a Johnny Cash album, I would say there's one hidden gem that I'm glad I've discovered. This is probably the best hidden gem I've discovered so far. And come to find out, this was the single released from this album. And it didn't actually chart, surprisingly. Like, they released it, but it didn't really catch on for some reason, which shocked me because this song is amazing. It's a prison song, and you can definitely feel that. You can hear like chains rattling in the background. It's like driving the beat. And then you get Johnny Cash, just singing this really catchy groove about his time in prison, that he's going to Memphis. And then I just love it as he continues singing these like outlandish stories about why he's in prison. You get that, I'm going to Memphis. Yeah, I'm going to Memphis. Oh man, for some reason I'm a sucker for these type of storytelling songs because that's something Johnny Cash I think he can relate to. He was in prison at one point, sometime in the '60s, so he has that relatability to it. But I think this came out before he was in prison, if I'm not mistaken. And we can't forget, he famously wrote Folsom Prison Blues, so he has
Yeah.
that relatability of that type of life. But yeah, this song is awesome. I think it's just as good as Folsom Prison Blues. I can't say it's better than Folsom Prison Blues, but it's definitely up there. It's an amazing hidden gem. Screw it. I'll just spill the beans. It's my favorite song on the album. I love this song.
Yeah, I think this is a great song on the album too. I think this is a great song to open up the second side of the album. I'm not gonna reveal anything. I'm just gonna say that this is my top five. I think this is a great way to open up the second side.
Mm-hmm.
But I may or may not agree with you. Who knows? But we get to the next song on the album when Papa played the dobro, dobro. I don't know.
Hey, dobro! Your papa's playing a dobro! But yeah, this is a great song too. Again, all these songs have great stories behind them. This is about a poor boy whose father is really good at playing the dobro, which is a really cool instrument in country music. And you get to hear some great dobro playing on this song, which you usually don't hear that instrument in Johnny Cash music. But I think it fits in with his style very well, and I think it's another really catchy song on the album. And this one's also in my top five.
I agree. This is in my top five. Really, I agree. It's a catchy song. So far, he's yet to have a weak song on this album. It's crazy. It's like huge step up from the last album. I'm loving everything about it. There's nothing for me to critique about it. It's oh man, this is just a great song on a great album. I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It's just one of those things where you got to listen to it for yourself. We get to the next song on the album, Boss Jack.
All right. This is another really good song as well. Another really catchy song. Again, the storytelling. Again, this song is interesting. It's about the relationship between a slave owner and one of the slaves. And it's actually more, not really what many people would say, because a lot of people see that in the negative context. This is more of a kind hearted guy who respected the people that was working for him. And this guy writing a song in response to his nice boss or whatever. But regardless of that, the storytelling is still good. Catchy little song. Uh, didn't make my top five, but still a really memorable song on the album.
Yeah, I think this is a great song on the album too. I This barely made my top five, so it made my top five, but just barely. It was a toss up between two songs, which I'll get into when we do our top five. But this is a great song, but it was a toss up between this one and a certain other song being in my top five. But I ultimately decided to put this one in my top five, though. Just barely, just barely.
I will say I like the part of the song and the story which talked about the slave character who he was trying to prepare a song for him. He was trying to learn how to sing or whatever, and the song that he sang was "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," which was a song Johnny Cash covered on his gospel album. So we get that kind of a that's a fun little connection there.
Yeah, and I really like Sweet Chariot. So I'm glad he made that connection. uh, but yeah, this is a great song. I personally really love it. Now we get to the last track on the album, Old Doc Brown.
Old Doc Brown. No, this has nothing to do with the time traveler. This one is interesting in the fact that yeah, there's music. It's technically a song, but it's technically not a song at the same time because he doesn't sing on this one. He talks his way while fiddles are playing in the background. That was a common trend in country music during this time. There will be songs in country music where, yeah, we got background instruments, but the character is telling a story while the music is playing in the background. There's other ones at that time that did that. Truthfully, I'm not the biggest fan of these songs usually. Some of them are just kind of boring in my opinion and they don't really engage me. But this one actually did engage me. I think because Johnny Cash has such a great baritone voice, like he's a great engaging storyteller and a great singer. So him telling this story about this old doctor who was well respected in this town and people's reactions after he died, I think it's still a very effective story. And I think it's a really kind of like a somber way to close out this album. I think I can't imagine any of these other songs closing this album, but I think this one actually does. Now, granted, it's my least favorite song on the album. I think it's probably by default because he's not actually singing on this song, but as a way to close this album, I think it works very well, and I do like the use of fiddles on this track.
Cool. Well, by default, it's also my least favorite song on the album. It's not really a song; it's more of a spoken word track. But having that said, I do agree with Jacob. It does work as the closing track. Um, it's good. I think it does a great job. I wouldn't listen to it on its own. I think it works better in the context of the album. But despite that, I still think it's a great track. Yeah, great way to end off the album, in my opinion. So let's get right into our top five. Jacob, what's your top five?
All right, well, I think because there's 8 tracks, I think I'm going to rank all 8 because this is a great album. Uh, Number 8, Old Doc Brown. That's mainly by default. 7 is Slow Rider, and then the one that was close to making my top 5, number 6, is Boss Jack. Top 5, number 5 is Durain of Pontchartrain. Number 4, When Papa Played the Dobro. Number 3, Lumberjack. Number 2, Loading Coal. And number 1, Going to Memphis.
Okay, you know what? I'll rank the songs too. Why not? Number 8, Old Doc Brown. Number 7, Loading Coal. Number 6, Slow Rider. This one barely missed my top 5. Number 5, Boss Jack. Number 4, The Reign of Pontchartrain. Number 3, Lumberjack. Number 2, When Papa Played the Dobro. And number 1, Going to Memphis.
and
I had to. This
the
song is awesome.
I think with each of these albums, there's been great songs on every track, but I think this might have been the first time we've agreed on what the best song on the album is.
I know it's so weird. Oh my goodness. Hey, that's great. But what are you gonna score? What score are you giving this?
All right, so in the past, some of my favorite Johnny Cash albums, the highest it's gotten has been 9 out of 10. And I've also given a couple of 8s, and my least favorite's a 6. 10 out of 10 for Ride This Train. This is a awesome, awesome album. Just the whole concept works brilliantly. Even the spoken word stuff, it's not a distraction. It's a great way of introducing the song and fitting it right into the songs he's about to sing. All 8 of these tracks are awesome, and I think they complement the theme of the album very well. This is an incredible concept album. I guess it was ahead of its time too, because he did this before a lot of popular artists in the other genres, like especially rock, would kind of popularize the concept album. This is before the Who did albums like Tommy and Quadrophenia. This is before, long before Pink Floyd did The Wall. long before Genesis did The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which are all acclaimed albums. No, before those guys, Johnny Cash here was paving the way with this simplistic concept album about riding a train all across America. And this album is awesome. It doesn't give enough credit where credit is due. I'd never heard any of these songs before. I guess it's technically an underrated album because I think most people, when they think best Johnny Cash albums, they think, oh, Hot and Blue Guitar. Yes, that's a great album. Or the Folsom Prison Live album, or any of those American albums, some of the last albums he did later in his career with Rick Rubin as producer. But no, this is a great album. I wouldn't be surprised if this album stays in my top 5 when we go through the series, but we'll have to see how good his other albums are. But man, 10 out of 10. Awesome album.
I'm in agreement with you, Jacob. 10 out of 10. This is the best album he's made so far, so I kind of gave it away what I was going to give the score of when I said that this was in my top 5 overall as of listening to his albums now, and even the ones I've also listened to, like the live albums. This is just one of those albums where it's just so unique. It's so different from what he's normally doing, and I think it really works to his favor. I just think this is a great album. This is an album that I say, whoever isn't a Johnny Cash fan, go check this out. This is a must-listen to album. You know, the American recording albums are good, and I think the live albums are great as well, but this is like an album that you have to also listen to. But stay tuned with us the next time we review a Johnny Cash album. Next one we're reviewing, Johnny Cash Sings Hank Williams.
All right.
I don't know how that's going to go because it's going to be a cover album again, so who knows? Hopefully it's good. This is a blind spot album for me, as a lot of them are, but hopefully this exceeds my expectations, but it's going to be hard to beat this album, let's just say that.
Yeah, I don't think the next album is going to top what we listen to, but we'll give it a shot.
Yes, of course. But stay in tune then. Anything else you want to say, Jacob?
All right. I hate to leave the island of Sodor with Thomas and Johnny Cash, but it was a fun journey. Now I'm going to Memphis, but not the prison.
Yes, me too. Well, I don't live there, so but thank you guys for watching. Well, thank you guys for watching today, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long.